Plastic Balisong trainers. There's something that almost everyone has in the Balisong community, and there seems to be an almost endless amount of new ones from different brands coming each year. So today, in this video, I'm going to be comparing 4 of them to show you some of the options that you have if you want to buy something in the range of $40 to $50 that's made out of plastic. So let's get started. Plastic trainers nowadays are very popular, especially since there are so many of them. Each of them have their differences, but they also follow their own similar formula that was very much popularized by Squid Industries. However, if you're not the Squiddy, you are definitely going to be looking at the Lct V3 Dragon, which follows a much different formula than the Squiddy per se. But the Squiddy, even though it does have 4 to new 5 different variants, there's still some room for experimentation. A good example being the Peonies from NDK Arts, which took a new spin to the plastic trainer by making them bendable and flexible. More on that later. As you can see, here's a bit of a size comparison. The Squiddy is the smallest of the 4, making the second to last place the Lct V3, and of course the first 2 places the Peonies. These two are absolutely massive compared to the Squiddy and the Lct. This is sort of the only way I can show you that, because they do all look a bit similar while being flipped, but they are huge. The Lct V3 is not exactly par for the course, for the fact that it uses a threaded bushing system along with washers, rather than the Peonies and the Squiddy, which are only on washers. This is to make the flipping experience more like a metal bushing system rather than a plastic Balisong only on washers. Each of them are different when it comes to durability, the least durable being the Peonies because it is made out of a flexible resin material, which allows it to bend very easily at different temperatures. The CPVC Squiddy comes in second, and of course the acetal Lct V3 Dragon comes in first, being the most durable out of all of them. However, it may vary depending on how much you do like to beat your knives. So take that into account. The performance of the Squiddy, in my personal opinion, is sort of like a baseline for all plastic trainers. If your trainer can compete with it or is better, then it's definitely going to sell, because in my personal opinion, Squid Industries could have done a lot better with the original Squiddy. Of course, they've done that by incorporating different interpretations of it after the Squiddy was released. But in my personal opinion, the Squiddy right now is very handle biased, but also very solid and smooth. It's sort of something that you can always come back to and flip for a bit, but I wouldn't necessarily flip it the entire day. It's not something I would beat constantly, especially since of how fragile they are, considering how many times I've seen people break theirs, but it still is a nice flipper that I can pick up occasionally. Speaking of improvements, let's talk about the Lct V3. The V3 is so much better than the V2. The V2 was so ridiculously handle biased that it basically could not be flipped. This is a much better flipper than the V2, but in comparison to the other ones, this is still handle bias and is about maybe even a bit more handle bias than the Squiddy. That doesn't mean it isn't a good flipper. It still flips pretty nice, and I do have to say the somewhat interesting bushing system does come in handy sometimes. It can do ladders thanks to the jimping, and is definitely a very nice bouncy experience thanks to the metal hardware inside of the Balisong. It is a very interesting experience with the sandwich constructed handles, and it's definitely very interesting to flip, so it's very nice, I have to say. Let's go ahead and talk about the Peonies, but first I do want to say I'm very glad to be sponsored by NDK Arts and for him to send me these 2 to try out and show you guys in these videos. So, as you can see, these are the Peonies. The purple one is the second variation, a more newest variation, and the emerald green one is of the previous variation. The newest variation, in my personal opinion, is a lot better than the first one. As you can see, it's a lot more rigid. It holds that handle gap a lot better than the first one. However, in flipping experience, they are both very similar. Of course, in design, they're a bit similar by the blade, but there also is some differences in there as well. As you can see, it has a bit more of a horn-ish shape than it does in the blade and the second variation, but in my personal opinion, the first one flips pretty darn good. It's very neutral comparison to the Squiddy and doesn't really have that handle bias. This may be due to the overall size being absolutely massive, but the weight is dispersed very well. It is a smooth experience, and on the initial close, it's a lot less loud than the Squiddy, but it still is a very much visceral slap. The second variation, however, is my favorite when it comes to being flipped. It's very smooth, it's responsive, it's tactile, and that's very surprising, especially since it's coming from a plastic knife. This does have a bit of a more upgraded washer system, so it's a lot more smooth, and it feels more responsive and more like a metal Balisong experience, and I like that a lot. So overall, between these four, you have a great selection of options you can go for. If you're looking for a sandwich construction knife, the Lct V3 definitely does the job. Or you can go with the classic Squiddy, but in my personal opinion, the Peonies are definitely a fantastic option if you're looking for a nice mid-range in that $40 to $50 range plastic trainer knife. I'll have his Instagram account in the description down below if you're wanting to look through his account and see what's going on. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.